welcome back. It is Bones, and let's go ahead and take a look at some custom work that I have done. Now, I have to be honest with you, I have been sitting on this little project for almost a year. I did have this leftover Red Hood body after doing another Red Hood custom, and over time, I did buy an extra unpainted head off eBay, and I fixed the peg to connect that resin head to this McFarland body. And then I just sat on it for months on end and really didn't do much with it. But for some reason, I finally got motivated to go ahead and paint the head because, of course, it came in one of those, gray artist tones that they come in, and do a little bit of washes and detail paint to the body. Now, by the time I did pick up this Red Hood figure, it was when they no longer came with guns. And just to get through that a little bit, I will talk about that once we take a look at this custom battle damaged Red Hood. And we'll take a little bit of look at the history of Red Hood figures from McFarland's DC Multiverse. Now, first off, let's take a look at this guy. Now, as I said, I did have this body left over, and I had thought of ways to customize a Red Hood. And I had seen images and different versions of Red Hood. They have that Red Hood where he has that like mouth cover. And I just ended up narrowing it down to this battle damaged head. Now, I did custom repaint this head on my own. I started off by doing the flesh tone in the crack of the helmet. I taped that off, and then I did the red, sort of metallic sports car red. And then I did add all of the details. Now, I did have to paint the white eye on the helmet, add all the little silver cracks, and I just thought it came out pretty good. Once I had all of that done, I went ahead and attacked the open eye. Now, at one point, I did wonder, why doesn't he have the domino mask that he usually wears, like on this side of his face? And it took me a while to figure it out. And what it is that whatever blew this part of his helmet off actually blew off the other part of his domino mask. That is why he just has a, naked eye. But as always, eyes are very difficult to paint on figures. Now, I did add a little bit of rosy tones to the skin tone after I had painted it one flesh matte color. Painted the eyebrows, painted the eyes, added a little bit of shadows to give it some depth. And I do think it came out pretty good. Now, once I got all of that done, I did mount the head with a regular peg. This is one time when the resin head actually came with a hole for you to pop the peg inside of. Although it is a little bit stiff, more than your average, plastic head, the resin doesn't give you as much smoothness in the articulation, but he still can look down, could turn his head, and he can look up as well. He even has a little bit of tilt for some attitude. Now, once I got the head painted and I was really happy with it, I went down and did some things that I never really done before. I mean, I have painted in the details like the zipper and the buttons to the jacket, the knuckles on the gloves. But what I have never done was actually add a sort of wash to the leather jacket. Now, this is a brown leather jacket, but it can come off a little bit plain when you first get these figures because it has no type of shadows or wash. So what I did first was actually mix up some darker brown and add those to the cracks and crevices of the jacket. And then when I was done with that, I came in with a little bit of matte black just to put a very thin line in the creases to give it that added sense of shadow, which I actually really enjoy. The bad part is that now I kind of want to do it to all of my Red Hood figures. But no, it's fine. I'll leave it with this one. Now, I didn't do much to the lower body. but I was kind of over using a lot of silver, like on the knee pads or on the kick pads. So what I ended up doing was actually using a gray gunmetal, which, although it does give it some separation from the rest of the costume, it's not so much the way the really shiny silver actually sticks out. So I thought it came out pretty nice. Now, that was basically it for this custom figure. I mean, he still articulates, he still strikes a really awesome pose. I did end up wanting to give him some sort of signature weapon, and the way I kind of figured it was that after this happened to him, where he got damaged, he's like, I'm gonna go all out. So he did get this sort of assault rifle, and you can put this in his hand for posing, or even put it in his hand for some action. Then going ahead and adding a little bit of blast effect. This does come from the McFarland munitions pack. Just really finishes off the look for this custom unmasked battle damage Red Hood. Now, I do admit, wasn't really a ton of work. I mean, the repainting for the body and the suit was pretty simple. I think the hardest part was painting that resin head sculpt and making it look like a finished product. But in the end, I am happy with this, and this guy will be, going on my custom DC Multiverse shelf now that I am done with him. Now, I must admit, let's go into the history of Red Hood figures and stuff like that. Was a later character after Jason Todd was revived in the Lazarus Pit. So people at first didn't really know what to make of him. But he ended up being a sort of anti hero. Actually, a lot of people's favorite character from the Bat family. Now, I do hold him in high regard, but over time, it has lost a little bit of its luster. They have also changed him a lot in the DC lore, but I will always remember the early iterations of Red Hood, especially watching that DC animated film, Under the Red Hood. And I do also remember at this time when I was collecting. Basically, I was collecting DC Universe Classics, and they never really made a Red Hood figure. So basically, you would have to go into DC Direct. And I remember seeing some of the DC Direct figures and not really, being impressed with them. Now, there was the DC Essentials Red Hood, which is actually a pretty good Red Hood figure. He came with his signature pistols and everything you would want from a Red Hood, but since I was never a big fan of the DC Essentials line, I just never ended up picking him up. So I was very happy when I did hear that Mattel was actually going to be doing their version of the Red Hood. Now, at this time, I had been kind of, losing interest in the DC multiverse from Mattel. Their figures were, hit or miss, and I didn't like some of the newer designs that they were trying to work with or the newer figure execution. But of course, I still, collected all of them. So I was going to buy them regardless if they were not, 100% making me happy. So we did get images of Jason Todd as the Red Hood. And surprisingly, it was going to be in the final wave from DC Multiverse Mattel. I think it was the Killer Croc wave. Now, we did eventually end up getting this figure. It was released. And this is where they started to show a little bit of the cracks in the armor. And that is because after all the time we waited, after, everything, everything, finally fell into place, they made the guns not removable from the holsters. And I'm sure this was the beginnings of their no gun ban that they would eventually go on to really enforce, especially once McFarland got the DC Multiverse line. Now, this figure, it's pretty good. I mean, I don't really love it that much. They did give him some sort of pumpkin pie haircutted freak look, which I was, not familiar with. The helmet also didn't come in a sort of metallic red. It was really just a plastic red. And another thing that was odd was that when you switched out the heads, the helmet fit really squat on the body and it just gave him a really weird look. But all in all, it was a good figure. But I mean, the pistols not being removable from the holsters just kind of killed it for me. And this one also had a lot of missing paint detail, but I mean, it is what it is. So now we go into where McFarland actually got the license. Now, what I think happened, which, I don't have anything to prove these, but McFarland did go ahead and come out with his awesome Red Hood figure. Now, I do know this was a single release, which is pretty expensive right now on the aftermarket. But they also made a two pack, which is how I, acquired mine. That was a two pack with Nightwing, the red version. And really, I was blown away by this figure. He just cuts a really nice silhouette. His aesthetics, the way his, body is designed, it looks really good. This was pretty much a 9 out of 10 figure from McFarlane. And this was very early in the line. And what I think happened was that he actually made the holsters, made the guns. Of course, the guns are removable on this figure. And when DC, saw this, they were kind of like, hey, didn't we make a gun ban or we don't want figures coming with guns? And McFarlane was like, I guess, that's what you guys want to do. So eventually, what happened is they told McFarlane that they no longer wanted any sort of, weapons with the figures, and that was really a downer. I'm still not sure how McFarlane was able to overcome this, basically crutch that they put on him by not allowing him to put weapons with figures. Now he did make the Thomas Wayne Batman, but after that, basically we just started getting figures without any type of firearms. But I do love this figure from McFarlane. I love the candy apple red helmet. I mean, this is by far your definitive version, your quintessential Jason Todd Red Hood in his earliest iteration. And it is an awesome figure to have if you do not own him. Now, basically, after him, we did get an alternate version, and that was the unmasked Jason Todd. But of course, now they did basically try to neuter him and took away his pistols. I'm not too sure of the history of the swords that he comes with, but I have found out over time that they are called like the all swords and they are super powerful. And I guess that's sort of a way to like appease people to say, oh, even though he doesn't have guns anymore, he's still like a very powerful character. But in all honesty, taking away that edge, the guns from him, really did a big number on his mystique. Now, the weapons did come back over time and in different versions. And although you do see it in shows and video games, a lot of the times when you see a Red Hood figure, he will not come with firearms. Now, eventually, I did make a custom version of this Red Hood. Now, this is what I was talking about when I said that I had an extra body because I actually took this unmasked head, and this comes from the battle damaged figure that I made because of course he doesn't have his holsters, but this is your original Red Hood figure release, but with a lot of cool added details. I did add silver to his, kick guards, to his boots, to the jacket. Now I didn't add a wash to him because in fact when I did this one I didn't really see too much benefit of giving him a wash, but now I do see the benefit, so I may go back and revisit this one and do a little bit of paint touch-ups to him. Now the head sculpt is very interesting because I actually wanted him with the domino mask because although I do enjoy this unmasked figure, for some reason it just never really screamed Jason Todd at me, and adding the red domino mask really does a lot to give him that little, Jason Todd mystique. And this is sculpted out by me directly on to the McFarland head and painted to give him that cool domino mask look. So that is a custom I did to make the ultimate Jason Todd. Now you can switch out the helmet and, swap out the head, put his guns in his hands. These actually have little red bats that are on the Red Hood pistols. So this is one of my favorite customs that I have done on a figure. Now, of course, after this, we did end up receiving the three Jokers Red Hood. And as I said, he was not going to come with guns, with any sort of holsters. They, ended up giving him a crowbar, which he does use in the comics and actually is a sort of symbol between Jason Todd and the Joker after, Joker beat the brakes off of him and left him for dead. And aside from the upper body having a whole new design, you got that sort of Robin, upper torso, a new jacket, a hoodie, a completely new helmet, which I don't prefer it to the original one, but it does have its own, style and look, which is, always appreciated. But besides that, the lower body is exactly the same. They just added some red tone to the straps on the legs. But I remember picking this one up and being pleased with him, but of course I was a little bit sad that he didn't come with any sort of pistols. Now, eventually, we did get the 5-pack Red Hood, which, aside from a couple of paint differences, there's just different tones of paint that are on this one. The Red Hood, the hoodie back here is a little darker, and that is how I know that this is the one from the 5-pack. And one thing they did do is they gave us this sort of battle damaged head, but it was really done pretty lazily. The plastic was just a red plastic, very reminiscent of the Mattel version. They didn't, really do any work in trying to make it actually look battle damaged. So eventually, what I ended up doing was giving them that metallic red paint and adding a little bit of silver, to the battle damage just to give it a little bit more pop. But of course, this was our second version of the Three Jokers Red Hood. Once again, they gave him a crowbar, but it's more of a mute gray, which I do think kind of sets him apart from the original release. So you do have two pretty cool versions of the Three Jokers Red Hood. But you know me, I was not satisfied, and I did have to make my own custom Jason Todd Red Hood from the Three Jokers. Now, I do have a video of this guy on my channel if you want to check it out because I did add holsters to his sides. I did add some pistols. Now, I did want to change these up to differentiate them from the original Red Hood. So these are more like some 45s. Pretty cool. But they are functioning. They do slip in and out of the holsters. And of course, you could pose him with the guns. Another cool thing is you can swap out this head. Now, this head is actually from the 5-pack. And I love this Jason Todd head. This is actually what I was expecting when we got this unmasked version. So I was really happy with this head sculpt. And to go ahead and add him to my custom Red Hood with the actual weapons, was just that chef's kiss. And of course, you do have his helmet that you could swap out with. So aside from other little paint details that I did, like adding the R to his belt, and retouching the head a little bit. Like I darkened the hair and then reshaped the eyes of the domino mask. This is another one of my favorite Red Hood customs that I have done. Really cool. So we do have a nice array of Jason Todds here. Now, I do have this random custom, and that is just getting parts that were left over from making all of these. But it's pretty cool. It has its own little style, which is the original Red Hood jacket, but with the Three Jokers lower body and the Three Jokers red helmet. So I have fun just keeping him around like this, just to give a different look to the Red Hood character. You aren't going to see too many of these combinations of the costumes, but I am happy to have him in my custom collection. And then finally, we do have two more Jason Todd Red Hoods. Of course, this is the Gotham Knights version, which McFarland released. And once again, it is kind of laughable that he has all the clips on his body. You could see the bullets, but they do not allow McFarland to release him with any sort of guns. Now, he does have guns in the game, and I actually customized him these guns. Pretty cool. Now, the way I clip them on here is they are magnetized. That's kind of the way it looks in the game. He doesn't have any, traditional holsters. The guns just kind of like slap onto the side of his thighs. And I did repaint this one, change a lot of the details on him, just to make him a little bit more to my liking and to add some different, you know, shades to him, make him a little bit more interesting than he was. And although not one of my favorite customs, he is a pretty cool Jason Todd from the video game, where actually Jason Todd in the video game, he's a beast, but they did change his bullets to like stunners or something like that, where he's not really using lethal force, which, as I said before, kind of takes away the mystique of what Jason Todd Red Hood was actually built on. Now, we ended up eventually getting also the Arkham Red Hood. Now, I had seen this one in a lot of different versions from DC Direct, and this one is once again customized by me. You got that red hoodie, you got the mask underneath, which once again was just a red plastic tone. So I eventually repainted it for a more metallic red, added tons of little details to the costume, to the jacket, to the belt, completely revamping this Red Hood figure. And once again, I did add his custom pistols. And once again, they are magnetized, so they pretty much sit there on the clips on his thighs. Now, this is actually a really nice looking figure, especially once you add a lot of the detail. Really happy with this one. He's very surprising once you add your own pistols, add your own paint details. He's really nice up on the shelf. Pretty interesting articulation. I did have to change out the wrist ball joints to give him the full four ways of articulation. And surprisingly enough, this one has one of the most insane forward crunches that I have ever seen. And I'm not sure why McFarlane doesn't use this, design a lot more on more figures, because he has a really crazy forward crunch, but you still get that side to side full range of motion. So, anyways, another one of my favorites. I would have to say he is up there on my top list of Red Hood customs. So, anyways, guys, these are all my Red Hood figures from McFarlane's DC Multiverse. The newest addition being this pretty cool battle damaged Jason Todd Red Hood. Pretty fun little project that I did in a couple of days. It didn't take me long, but I hope you guys found it pretty interesting, especially going back and looking at the history of the releases of Red Hood in the DC action figure lines. But, anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.